All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Whitney Ross, and with me today is Tom Rasnick. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you. We're going to go a little deeper into Sunday's sermon and just talk a little bit more about that, just conversationally, if that's all right with you.
That's great. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward
great.
to it.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
We think about the scripture passage that kind of prompted the sermon, I guess, around that walk to Emmaus story, and you really focused in around the idea of experiencing the presence of God and how we see God. And you had asked for some input from people, personal stories about maybe how they have experienced God. And you said you feel like that kind of how we talk about God or how we experience God, those personal stories are helpful.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting to hear someone's personal experience around how they experience what we call God, because from my perspective, God is it's a huge word that is underlying it is a deep, deep mystery about life, about what we might even call reality. And that's hard to get at, sometimes. So talking about people's experiences, especially experiences that were powerful, that evoked strong feelings, I think is the best way to go about what I mean when I'm talking about God, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's thinking back about some of those stories, some of them were in kind of everyday situations. Some of them were more in the midst of tragedy or great stress. And then others were very mysterious or almost mystical.
Yeah.
And I think that really related to me because I can relate to each of those at different times. And it got me thinking about frequency, kind of in two different ways, with the idea of how well tuned in am I to a frequency to be able to recognize God around me, and then also how frequent do I recognize God around me.
Yeah, those are two great perceptions. How often we recognize, once again, this mystery that we call God is a big question. And for me, it's a matter of how much am I paying attention? And what am I paying attention to? And, so for me, if I have a very full day of to-do items and tasks that I feel like I need to complete, none of which are bad, I'm not saying that at all, then generally I get a kind of a myopic view and I just want to get those things done. And it's very easy for me to filter out anything that doesn't align with those things. Encountering the presence of God with more frequency, or in another way to say it is on a daily basis, for me anyways, I have to be very open and intentional about that.
Are there specific ways that you've found that help you to be more open, or practices even?
Yeah, so for me, early in the morning's better. Before I have to do anything or anything's coming in and demanding my time and attention.
Yeah.
I don't have children at home anymore, so the early morning is a time of solitude, usually. And then getting outside. So getting outside, taking a walk, having a cup of coffee helps, wake up and all that kind of stuff. But the getting outside to where I can kind of listen and walk as I'm listening, that's what helps me.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. The same thing for me. Being outside has always been something that changes my senses and my perception. You think about people that we kind of talk about the concept of sensory overload, sometimes, and just so much coming in, it's hard to make sense of it. And I wonder if sometimes we're not in a sensory underload, sometimes where we don't have our senses attuned at all, where it's the idea that we're just, like you said, when you're so in a routine or so in a pattern that you're not looking for or expecting anything out of the ordinary, whatever the ordinary is.
Yeah, because I already know what I've got to get done.
Right.
And once again, those things aren't bad. It just tends to close down my perception.
There's a quote that you often begin your sermons with that starts with apprehend God in all things.
Apprehend God in all things, for God is in all things. Every single creature is filled with God and is a book about God. Amen.
Tell me a little bit more about that quote, kind of where that came from, and it seems to really fit specifically with this message a lot.
Yeah, so it comes from I think like 14th, maybe 15th century guy whose name he was called Meister Eckhart.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a pastor of a church in Germany, and he did other things and was connected to, I think it was the Dominican house in the Roman Catholic world. And he's the one that came up with that that sentence, that phrase, apprehend God in all things, for God is in all things. So it's the idea is for me, it was to do just what we're saying, pay attention, because something of God is in all of nature, what we call nature, all of creation. And it's going to have a lot to do with how I understand how somebody else understands nature. So if nature for me is separate from God, then that right off the bat, you're not going to find God there.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah, good
it's going to be a very, if nature is just simply dead matter for my use, that's going to be a particular way that I'm going to go about seeing nature. But if I apprehend God in all things and I come at God that way, and believing that God is within all that I see within nature, then somehow or another something of God can be experienced through that, regardless of what it is.
Yeah. It was interesting to know. I mean, it seemed like you got quite a few responses, and across the board in different things. Do you think people? I sometimes find myself hesitant to share my God experiences, either from I don't know, maybe a fear of judgment or comparison, or do I trust it or not? I mean, it seemed like that, but was it really that? What do you think are some barriers for people to share those experiences?
Well, I think what you just said are two big ones. I think oftentimes people might have shared their experience of something mysterious, something that they couldn't quite put their finger on, out of the ordinary perhaps a little bit, or out of their ordinary perhaps a little bit. And then somebody else said, well, that's not God, or what, are you crazy, or that kind of thing, and that tends to shut people down. So being around somebody who's like an authority, like this is the only way God can be, and they shut down anything else, that I think has a big effect, especially if that person has any kind of authority for the person trying to share their experience. So that's a big one. And the other one, like you said, can I trust my experience?
Yeah.
Can I trust that what I'm experiencing is what I'm experiencing, or am I making this up?
Yeah.
And I think once we can that's why I wanted people to just share whatever it is that came to their minds with, when did you experience God? Whatever that was for them, because it was true for them.
I was very moved by the stories and challenged by it, hopeful by it. Each one I heard, I just kept thinking, I want that. I want more of that. And just think about, you had said, if you really could, how nice would it be to be able to do a sermon where people just stood up and shared those things?
Yeah.
Where just people freely stood up and shared their experiences of God. And I mean, it feels like in some ways, that's what Sundays are, but we don't often do it in that way.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to find the right setting for that.
Yeah.
The Sunday regular church service isn't really set up for that. It's really set up for a much more watch and listen and take in, and less participate. So it would almost be like we set up a place for that, set up a time, and then trust that we can have some ground rules, meaning a person's experience is a person's experience. We can ask questions, but we don't get to judge it.
Yeah. When I was in college, there was a gentleman that I knew that I thought kind of brought this up to me, who his name was David E., and I heard about him a lot before I ever met him. He was somebody that kind of had legendary status, if you will, because he would just show up in unusual places and do unusual things. And like there was one day when the bridge across campus was frozen over, And at 5 o'clock in the morning, he went out and shoveled the bridge for the campus.
Oh, wow.
Didn't tell anybody, just went and did it and then disappeared. And, walking to class, somebody said, well, David E. did that. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, And as we found out more about him, he had done an internship with NASA, and he'd done all these really incredible things, and it became this legendary kind of thing in a way that as people shared experiences that they had with him, his character kind of grew.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it kind of took on a life of its own,
Yeah,
And not that that's exactly the same as this, but I think about, when we share those different experiences that we've had, or I recognized God in this way, or I saw him in this way, so many times it broadens our picture. It gives us a more colorful picture of who God is, or I've never seen God in that situation before. That's really interesting.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. That's a great symbol. Because I think God has to be at least as big as where my imagination goes.
Mm-hmm.
God has to be at least as big as the universe. So God has to be at least as big as how we try to go about talking about God, and people's experiences of that. And so oftentimes I think it's my fear if I want to shut somebody down and say that couldn't be God.
Yeah.
So just like the stories of David E., the more we talk about it, the broader it will get.
Yeah.
And then our image of God will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think it can get too big.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible.
One of the quotes that somebody shared was, it started out with, if I shut up, I see God everywhere. And I think about that, my own role in my lack of seeing God. What am I doing, or what am I saying, or my own habits that block that sometimes makes me aware of that.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, once again, we're in a very doing-oriented society, and we have a lot to do. And most of the things that we do are really good things. But sometimes in our rush, in our mad rush, sometimes it feels like a mad rush, to get things done, we have to shut off a lot of our other senses, a lot of our other, our imagination, our intuition, a lot of things in order to get what's right in front of us done. And many of us, our plates are so full. There's so much right in front of us, we never have any time. There's never time. And so it's, I think that's what I took when he said, shut up. The idea that I just kind of, okay, I know I got to get that done. I can put it on hold for a second.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be for the whole day. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But it can be for a period of time. And it's almost like, to me, it's like building the muscles of imagination, building the muscles of paying attention and watching and being present. All those things that can become such cliches, but are so true. How present am I in any given moment? Am I there, or am I somewhere else?
Yeah.
Because if I'm not there, then I have no chance of experiencing God, because God's always in the moment.
Yeah. And you had mentioned several times, especially in this Easter season, the message is everywhere that God's alive, God's with us,
Yes.
And I think that's so big.
Yeah.
It's hard to grasp.
Yeah.
What does that mean, that he's alive? What does it mean that he's with? I mean, is that everywhere? Yeah. But really?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that's like, wow, how do you even begin to come to terms with that?
Yeah, I think that's the thing about saying God is everywhere or in everything, is that it can be so big and overwhelming. So a lot of times it's finding specifics. So God is like, at one of the stories, the person was talking about the golden hue in the sky that came right at a time when that person needed peace. So it's like this story. Here's a good one. Here, they're all good, but this one really hits what I'm talking about. It starts like this. This might sound odd, but when my dad died, we went to the funeral home to finalize details of the arrangements of his burial. It had been a gloomy, cloudy day, and after leaving the funeral home, the finality of the situation was setting in. On the way home that evening, the sun began shining through the clouds in a way I had never seen before. the sky had, for a few moments, the most beautiful golden hue. I told my wife it was a heavenly light. A heavenly light. It was almost overwhelming. It was so beautiful. And he goes on, I know there's a natural explanation for it. But in my mind, at that time, I felt God's presence in a powerful way. That light came to me at a time when I really needed a sense of peace. And somebody else echoes that exact same thing. She puts it this way. I experienced the presence of God at my lowest point in my life. But while I was in this low place, instead of feeling bad or angry, I felt an incredible sense of strength and peace despite my present circumstances. There was no good reason for me to feel strong or peaceful. But those feelings have never been so clear. It was overwhelming. So it was right there in that moment, you see. Mm-hmm. It was in something specific. At its best, that's what the Eucharist is supposed to be. So at its best, the Eucharist is supposed to be, yes, God is everywhere. But in this specific moment, through these specific elements, we say Christ is present. Mm-hmm. And we can experience that presence. So it's everywhere. It's in all of nature in particular. Yeah. But it's helpful to find the specific place or the specific event. Yeah. So that it doesn't just stay in that ethereal category of everywhere. Mm-hmm. Some people said they encounter God really through other people. So, well, okay, right. Who's that person and in what way? Mm-hmm. So it gets real specific rather than keeping it at that general, which, like I said, it is so big, it can be almost meaningless. It's so big.
Mm-hmm. One of the stories that was shared was about I believe it was the person's father, and they were in the cabin, and the wind blew through the cabin, and the statement was that he left us on that wind.
Often God's presence, as you know, if you've experienced it, has kind of an uncanny and mysterious feel. It's like this story. As I sat by the bedside of my father-in-law, he began taking what would be his last breaths. In that moment, a couple of things happened simultaneously. A picture frame that was running random pictures suddenly stopped. It stopped on a picture of his wife. She had died a long time ago. But in the picture, she was young, and I had the feeling she was waiting for him to come join her. Then, a strong wind came rushing from nowhere down through the valley. The wind bent the trees, it was so strong. We had the windows open for the mountain breezes to come through, so that wind blew through the room. He left us on that wind. It was surreal. Everyone felt God's presence and comfort. It just reinforced to me that if I look for signs of God's presence, they are always there. They're always there.
Man, I mean, that just hit me so hard with the idea of, okay, here you have a situation that's sad, but there was such a clear presence and connection to God, and knowing that's what it was in that moment. It just reframes everything.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, is she knew for her, there it is. And, so if we want to take this into the tradition, the word for spirit, the word for breath, and the word for wind are all the same thing in Greek. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anytime we hear in Scripture spirit, wind, breath, it's talking about the same phenomenon in larger or smaller ways. So for this person, yes, the wind, there it is. The wind is the spirit. And the wind carries this person away, this person's spirit away. And that was direct encounter for that person. Somebody else might have been there and maybe not
Maybe
have seen
didn't
it that way.
experience it, yeah.
Maybe wouldn't describe it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe would describe it in a very different way. But for her, it was this powerful, mysterious, and yet at the same time comforting experience that affected her.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the whole God being alive thing, is God is a living energy, spirit, once again, we talk about, that has an impact, that affects us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really coming out of a time where people almost have turned God into an intellectual concept that I either agree with or I don't agree with.
Interesting, yeah.
All right, so that's a very different thing than spirit, energy, breath, a very active, energetic thing.
Well, and it's a full body experience versus a head
Yeah.
knowledge type of thing.
Yeah. And who's right, who's wrong, I
Right.
agree, I disagree, which religion has just been eaten up with for a long time. So that's why, for me, the whole thing started with what's your experience, not what do you think or what,
Yeah.
okay, so.
I like the story you shared. I can't remember if it was a sunset or sunrise that the three different people were watching, and each of them had a different perspective.
So, one beautiful morning, three people walked down to the edge of the ocean. And each of them were going down there to see the sunrise. The first person saw just the immense physical beauty of the sunrise, just how beautiful it was. And that person felt happy. And that was it. They went about their day. The next person enjoyed the beauty, all the beauty that the first person saw. But that person also thought about, as he was watching the sunrise, he also thought about the cyclical rotation of the earth and how he really wasn't seeing a sunrise, but he was actually seeing the rotation of the earth on its axis as it orbits the sun. You with me? Okay. So he was happy with and impressed with being able to see what's really happening. Okay? And then there's the third person. Third person saw the beauty of the first person, and she also saw the complexity of the second person, the complexity of what we're actually seeing. But she also experienced something that I'm going to call awe. A-W-E. Awe. Not awe. You know? So the big awe. All right? She experienced awe. And she experienced awe because she realized somehow or another, as she watched this sun rise, she realized that she is connected to and a part of a mystery that is greater than herself. She is connected to and part of a mystery that's greater than herself. And this experience produced a rush of feelings. Feelings of peace, feelings of joy, majesty, wonder, just to name a few. In that moment, as she watched what happens every single day, as she watched that, the sun shone just deeper and brighter. The colors were more brilliant. The ocean reflected this beautiful, glorious light. And she realized she is a part of it all. She's a part of all of it. And in that state, in that place of deep feeling, of deep connection, of deep awe, she saw God.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I can see myself moving through each of those different perspectives at different times, depending on where I am, but knowing that as well that three different people could view something entirely differently, but still get something from it.
Right, so the same event, the
Yeah.
same thing happening, and 3, there's probably way more than 3. But the thing is if I mean, first thing is if I'm paying attention to it, all the people who aren't even paying attention to it was the sunrise don't get to have any of those.
Right.
Okay, they're doing whatever it is they're doing. So the ones who are paying attention to the event that's going on, and yeah, it can hit us in lots of different ways.
Yeah. As I was thinking about the stories and just the sharing of those and hearing other people's experiences, this is kind of an odd example, but it reminded me of a movie clip from one of the Star Wars movies.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but I kind of grew up with those movies. I like those. And in one of the more recent movies, enough time has passed that the Force and Jedis and all those kinds of things are stories, but people don't really experience it anymore. And there's a section where they're talking to Han Solo, and he kind of pauses and he turns to them and says, "It's true. All of it. All of it's true." And it's just this quiet moment of the realization of everything that we hoped, being a people that need this hope to overcome, it's real. We'd hoped it was real, but now we're hearing it is from somebody who firsthand has experienced it,
Yeah.
and what that means. And I had that same feeling listening to those stories with the idea of this is true.
Yeah.
This is real.
Yeah.
Other people see this. We see this together. It's alive,
Yeah.
like you said.
Yeah. There's no substitute for personal experience.
Yeah.
There's just no, people use the term mystic or mystical, and really at its heart, for me, what mystic and mystical are trying to get at is personal experience. I have a personal encounter and it always enlarges, makes the world larger for me, makes everything bigger. So somebody could tell me about that, and if I trust the person telling me, then I might have true belief and faith in what that person is telling me, and that's great. That's a wonderful thing. But it's very different from me experiencing what that person is telling me.
Right.
And I think God can be experienced. And what I mean by God is the Spirit of God, that active energy that permeates all of life. That active spiritual presence that can be encountered. Whatever else there is about God, we can't experience that, but that we can. If we want to take this into the Christian Trinitarian form, we can, and that would be the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for the time today. I appreciate the discussion, and hope we can do this again sometime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate it.